Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everybody to Designing Beyond Launch, Managing Design Debt in Medical Devices. My name is Lew Levine. I'm from Boston Engineering Corporation. We've got a booth over here at 633, so I encourage you to visit after the talk. Today, I will be talking about a topic that's kind of very near and dear to the folks' hearts who are in the medical device space. Let me introduce you to our agenda today. So, design debt is something that I'll define shortly, but knowing what it is and managing it becomes critically important to medical device firms. At Boston Engineering, we follow a paradigm of 5 pillars that we've come up with that will help you understand it, deal with it when it comes up, manage it through its life cycle, and make sure that it's not causing harm to your development cycle as it goes along. And then Boston Engineering will talk about what it is that we could do to help you in that regard. So realities of product development in any world, medical device or otherwise, are always fraught with unknowns. And when you're going to encounter those unknowns and you decide to make trade-offs, there are ramifications to those trade-offs. So it's a fact of daily life. Things come up. You know what happens. Time is not elastic. Funds are not unlimited. And the rules of physics don't care if you've got a deadline. So you've got to make decisions. You got to make decisions on the fly and do that quickly. Some of the more pertinent issues to the medical device space beyond simple technical decision making is your regulatory pathway, how you deal with quality, how you organize your operations, supply chain, etc. So we in the medical device space face a number of challenges that others would otherwise find particularly challenging. So in the practice of looking at product development, every decision we make across functions, across the board, come back and have implications. It's really managing that and understanding what those are. That's the distinction of how you want to both manage your development and manage this concept of design debt. So let's get into that at this point. So what is design debt? Great question. Design debt is a broad concept. It really comes from this notion of technical debt, which really talked about the way that people implemented, probably started with coding, but the way people made choices in their underlying designs. You wouldn't call them shortcuts per se, but there are pressures, and eventually you'll get to a point of saying, well, I'll compromise with this, or I'll select this particular hardware to implement on, and before you know it, you've incurred a debt or a liability to the future that you probably more than likely have to pay back, because what you've done today may not be informed to what you want to accomplish in the future. So those designs can become unwieldy, bulky. They become a drag on your ability to develop products going forward on that similar type of architecture. The notion of design debt kind of grew from that and originally spoke primarily to the user experience, both in terms of the device, let's say, that you're creating, as well as how you present yourself as a company. So design debt was really about kind of the user experience. Was your UI too bulky? Was it too confusing? Did it kind of put people off? To your labeling. In our world, labeling is everything from your user manual to even the brochures and the marketing literature that you put out. Too many fonts, stylistically it didn't look good. It was just off-putting. It kind of had that dissonance that just didn't feel right. So that term is what's become known as design debt to some degree. But then further, the fact that you have to work across functions within medical device development. You've got to get your regulatory and your quality and your operations all online. And all those decisions that you make at any given time can add up. And if they're not informed and managed appropriately, they can become liabilities later on. So that greater whole of the organization making decisions on how to approach a subject. I'm not aware of a specific term for that, but we're going to collectively call that, for the sake of argument for today's discussion, design debt. The management of that debt becomes important, just as if you would manage a financial debt. So I'll always go back to relating this to financial debt in those terms. It's something that you take on today. If you don't understand it, it can come and bite you later on in the future. So as noted, we're special in the medical device space. We've got a lot of other customers, a lot of other entities and kind of looking at us and what we do and how we do it and make sure that we're doing it correctly. So compliance, complexity, as I have here, long product life cycles. The result of all this is cost post-launch can be incredibly high. So the decisions that you take on early become potential liabilities as you move forward. So managing those becomes particularly important. Again, because of those ramifications. So part of design debt is the unintended consequence of taking it on and not realizing it. So your decisions on how to approach a market may be driven by competitive or customer need, but the response to that need is where things can go awry. I'm going to describe this by way of an example. I've got a few in here. So take a look at this in the terms of medical infusion space. So this is the BD Alaris infusion system. So BD is not unique in this space. There are obviously a lot of competitors here, so this is not it's not a session that we're going after Becton Dickinson, but it does highlight some of the issues that are faced as far as strategic planning. So, like many in this space, these companies, and here you see the BD Alaris. In the center is the pump control unit. To the left is large volume pump. Right, is a syringe pump. Their modular design is very popular. Space, you can kind of tag these modules together. But one decision that they've made, and a lot of others have made in the space, is to open up their ecosystem to third-party providers of infusion sets and syringes. And over the last many years, what you found is that control of those capabilities, the control of those accessories, become instrumental in the essential performance of the pump. So whether it was intended or not, seemingly BD had opened themselves up to product changes that weren't controlled by them, affecting their performance over the years, over many years. They and others have been afflicted by potential patient harm as well as involuntary FDA activity. So that decision to open up that ecosystem perhaps wasn't planned to go this way, resulted in the strategic liability or this debt that they took on by doing so. Again, the understanding your contextual decision-making process and planning for that strategically so you don't end up with a tactical liability later on is the justification of a decision. A lot of this sounds like risk management, but it goes across the board. Risk management, we know in the medical device space, is primarily geared to patient harm, patient property users, the environment, but the notion of design debt goes beyond that. So taking a look at decision and justifying it. Document, and document it. You can't document it enough. So the decision that you make today, understand what the ramifications are, what the trade-offs are, what you're potentially sacrificing in the future based on a decision that you're making upfront. And understanding that perhaps that technical decision may result in a service or operations impact. So it's all connected ecosystem at the end of the day. Again, like any type of plan, anticipate an exit strategy. I've worked in medical devices for quite some time, and a lot of the waterfall models that people employ talk about ideation, design development, B&V activities, getting things out to market. A few of them sometimes have the decommissioning and the removal of that product from the market. But in the context of design debt, knowing how you're going to get away from that, repay that liability in the future is very important. So when you take a look at the trade-offs, it's very important that you obviously make these as cost-based decisions, as risk-based decisions. You make the accumulation of that debt visible. So things are not hiding in the shadows and being visible becomes essentially important. Understanding what those trade-offs are is one approach to that. So given that we're talking about medical devices, some of the areas that I'm sure a lot of people have encountered in this world is this decision to use a stepwise regulatory process to get a product to market through the 510(k) process. Introduce your lowest capability product. And again, some people may recognize that term as the minimum viable product, which, depending on which side of the aisle you're on, marketing or engineering, can be a really disturbing topic to talk about. But you take this decision to do a stepwise approach that, we're going to put out a very simple, easy to come up with substantial equivalence argument to a device that's already there. Doesn't satisfy necessarily the market need, but it gets you on the market, and then you end up using that as your predicate for yourself later on. That's certainly a strategy. And looking at that strategy, you can say it's going to cost me more or take me longer to do that, but I'm going to reduce regulatory risk perhaps. But you may be incurring a debt to your customers in that you're not actually delivering the product that they actually want. You're delivering more of a Me Too product. Again, it satisfies that regulatory concern. So it's all a big balancing act. On the other side, on the operations side, always the desire to find appropriate vendors. Sometimes you make a knee-jerk reaction to save money with a low-cost supplier. Have you truly vetted them well enough? Perhaps not. So that low-cost supplier, while their cost may appear low, the cost actually may be higher because they don't deliver on time or their quality isn't as good. So again, it's just a lot of this stuff may be basic, but the idea that the business, like a device, is a complex system, keeping that in mind becomes particularly important. Being able to quantify the types of trade-offs that you're willing to take on. So, by way of another example, bring up a poster child of how not to do things in the medical device space. Some people may have heard of this. It's actually the 40th anniversary this year of the beginning of these pretty horrific incidents. The Theric 25 was a medical linear accelerator. It was developed by the Atomic Energy of Canada Limited Corporation. It caused great harm. It's a cancer treatment device that had 6 well-documented recorded incidents. They were all horrific. There were 3 deaths. There were 2 profound injuries, basically life-changing injuries associated with this device. A lot of people look at this as a case study to how to do poor software development. But what it was about this device was a company that got complacent in first the notion that software can cure all ills, and they took out the hardware interlocks for the critical safety features of this device. So if people aren't familiar with it, users were able to, through the user interface, the lack of these hardware interlocks, dose the number 25 for these systems is the number of MEVs, million electron volts of energy that could be applied to the patient. They're able to take what was supposed to be a therapeutic dose and turn it into a very destructive dose. This company didn't do user experience or human factors. They decided software was the answer to everything, and they took out their hardware interlocks. Once issues started happening, they failed to address the marketplace. They said, must be user error, couldn't have been with our system. There's nothing wrong with our system. It runs on software, it's perfect. So, speaking as a software engineer, it's a terrible statement to make. But what it came down to was they pretty much did everything wrong. The slight silver lining to all this is a tremendous amount of initiatives came into play between software management, human factors, et cetera, that we're all well aware of today. But the fact that they were able to substantiate early on that we could save a few dollars by taking these hardware safety systems out and relying particularly on the software and not really looking to see how their current customers use the device, to see how their user interface was laden with design debt that allowed them to cause this, was what got them into trouble. So the next topic I want to talk about is sort of the notion of a life cycle ready architecture. So this notion that if you want to incur debt by not necessarily having all the capabilities initially, you have at least planned for the future, and you can accommodate those in your technology. So again, by way of an example, this is the Epic ultrasound system by Philips. Represents a very planned strategic approach to the market for both cardiac and radiology ultrasound systems. So from a single common modular platform of software and hardware, they claim, and the market tests to the fact, that they've developed a system that can address multiple needs. The cost of that is probably substantial. Can't talk to it specifically, but they've got hardware capability in the form of being able to take multiple transducers. They've got software modules that bring in new modalities and new analytic capabilities. They've got a user interface that's common between all these systems. So a sonographer who's working in the cardiac lab one day can get into the radiation lab the next day, or the radiology lab, and be able to function and use this system. They future-proof themselves by putting in capabilities in their hardware to do those advanced analytics. So the trick there is they've incurred a near-term debt by putting all this capability in. What they have to realize in the future is how do they get their money's worth, so to say, out of that. So you maybe perhaps in a short term, again, I don't know what their margins are, but put a lot of this hardware and a lot of this capability in, it's going to cost you a lot. Your margins may be down as you put in more features and you have more marketable qualities to your system. You can get to a broader range of markets, charge higher prices. So that's how they realize the payoff. Again, as we review what was critically important about that product life cycle ready architecture, is that notion that you're going to plan for extensions, you're going to plan for change. You can plan as much as you want, but as they say, stuff happens. So you're going to be ready to and plan for being able to conduct failure investigations. Something will always come up that you didn't think of. It's just the way it is. So being able to do those investigations, build in capabilities in your system, perhaps network connectivity, perhaps other hooks that allow the service organization to do their things, becomes particularly important. And you'll have to eventually make revisions. That's just the way these things work. And of course, while you're looking at that life cycle type of architecture, life cycle ready architecture, those deferred requirements of the kind of multi-generational approach, if you take that, always understand what you want it to be. So you're not just planning for what's next, you're planning into the future, not for the now, but necessarily for the future. So you want to take that into account. Again, just like any technology, a business is a system. All the parts and pieces work together. As I like to say, there are very few only tasks. Well, this is only a software change. Oh, this is only a piece of marketing literature. Oh, this is only a new indication for use that we're filing. It's all interconnected. So getting all of your ducks in a row, so to say, getting all the functions informed of what's going on becomes critically important, particularly as you take on a decision to do something a certain way that you know will have ramifications going forward. So a couple of cases in point relative to the medical device space. A decision to select an advanced processor to address future needs. Better make sure from an operations standpoint, because we all know how long life cycles are and how long products stay in the market, medical device space, an operations group who's capable and ready to take on the task of finding and securing those processors. A decision to incorporate remote connectivity, again, understanding what you need from cloud-based connectivity and systems, all the way to cybersecurity in these days. So very much present. And again, unfortunately, in the infusion pump world, another aspect of them opening up their devices for access to networks, being aware of that and how you must harden and enforce security guarantees there. A decision to support lean manufacturing. You better have something that's manufacturable. You better have modular design and the ability to support that manufacturing organization. So this is as much a talk about kind of incurring debt in terms of cross-functionality as it is don't have an over-the-wall type of mentality where one group throws over the wall to another group. So getting all your functions aligned in those critical decisions that can make or break your product offering is critically important. Obviously, if you take a decision now to put out the minimum viable product, you better have a plan on how to get that maximally marketed one. So I don't know if that's a real term, but that's what I'm using here today. So if you're holding something back, if you've made some type of decision, understand what that decision is and understand how you're going to get away from that in the future. Because just like financial debt, you just can't keep taking it on to start dragging you down. So once you decided to take on that debt, looking at how you would resolve that becomes critically important. So in structuring the business and decision-making process of that cross-functional team becomes important as well. So we're all familiar with the CAPA process and root cause analysis, but you've got to be ready to fully diagnose at the failure level potentially of the business what a decision means. So taking this as a holistic idea becomes critically important. And again, just like any process, continued improvement becomes key to that as well. So you want to be able to solicit feedback and create a feedback loop so you can do this thing on the next round smarter and well as well. So again, just as a interlude here, the notion of debt isn't a bad thing. It's the way you manage that debt that can ultimately become a bad thing. So if you manage it poorly, it can have wide-ranging ramifications on your business and ultimately your customers. So it's costly, and particularly a cost that becomes very apparent in the medical device space is the opportunity to cause patient harm, which we certainly all want to avoid and not ever have to deal with. So this notion that we're monitoring our performance in terms of post-market surveillance, we also have to be able to monitor how well we are clearing our debt and addressing ourselves for that next iteration in the marketplace. So again, we don't want to avoid the concept of debt if we're consciously taking it on. We want to not only consciously take it on, but look at ways that we may be making decisions day to day that may be allowing it to creep in unintentionally. So again, knowing when to use it is important. Knowing how to recognize that it's happening kind of behind your back is as important as well. And that comes with, again, putting a process in place that just helps you manage that type of decision making to realize when you have an issue or not. So again, talk about design debt, kind of at the technical level, at the user experience level, at the business level. Talk about a strategy on how to address that debt. What I want to leave you with is this notion that if you can manage it, you can control it and plan for it, even if the unexpected should occur. So these particular pillars of identifying when it's happening, purposely bringing it to play or not, looking at the trade-offs, what the cost benefit analysis of those trade-offs might be, creating both a technological and a business life cycle architecture that's ready to handle it, particularly important, making sure that everybody's on the same page, got that cross-functional alignment, and planning your exit strategy. So collectively, you can make debt something that's viable and shouldn't be shied away from, because if you're not using it, certainly an opportunity that your competitors may be. So again, it shouldn't be something that you just say, we're not involved with this. This is just too scary a thing. Ultimately, success is something that looks like it's managed well. It's got few surprises. You never eliminate surprises totally, but you can take a look at what success would look like by way of the examples that I provided, the Epic systems, by way of the examples that showed it not working particularly well, by way of infusion pumps and the Therax system. But ultimately, you want to reduce the opportunity for surprises by planning what you want to do. And ultimately, this is about satisfying the marketplace, satisfying your customers, and getting your products out safely and securely, and ultimately profitably. Brings us to the point in the talk where I tell you a bit about Boston Engineering, and we can help to make that successful for you. So Boston Engineering is all about partnership. So we like to be your partner. We're in the engineering services, contract development space. But what we want to do is partner with you, bring your good ideas to market, allow the conversation about design debt to enter into the equation if it makes sense, help you assess whether it makes sense and strategy and how to deal with that. So the incorporation of advanced technology and doing things that are brand new, which a lot of us are about doing, supporting the medical community and patient healthcare. It's about finding new and innovative ways to do that. If it were done before, it would be easy. If it hasn't been done before, it's hard. So getting a partner who can stand with you and stand by you to help get you through that becomes particularly important. Boston Engineering has been doing this for about 30 years or so at this point. So I'd like to partner with you as it's appropriate. We've got the staying power. We've been there. We've probably seen a few things. We don't take that as a recipe to solve future elements, but we take it clearly under advisement so that experience pays off in an understanding of what can possibly happen in this type of market. So we love to be there to help with that, with our systems-based thinking approach. We've got a lot invested in DFX, designed for our manufacturing serviceability. Regarding medical device space, your regulatory pathway, and your operations become important as well. So we're there to help in that regard, and I'd like to do so. We'll get one more slide to go forward. All right, so just in closing statements before getting into some Q&A, if people have it. Design debt isn't a four-letter term. Well, I guess it is. But it's not a bad one. So you should approach it. You should approach it knowing what it is, and at least if you're not going to utilize it, recognize the warning signs and when it may be creeping into your situation. So again, the debt isn't bad. Not managing the debt is, and having a team that's capable of helping you do that, both internally and potentially externally. That's the best way to approach that. So, thank you for your attention. And if there are any questions, we'll open the floor. I think this microphone in the center is live. Oh, maybe not.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thanks for the talk. I appreciate it. So, are you talking about the design debt? So, there's going to be some planned design debt that you're kind of working through before design transfer, and there's going to be some unforeseen design debt that's going to come up as a result of feedback or complaints or what have you. What are some kind of best practices to kind of manage what you plan to work on versus those things that show up after, and how to kind of compare and kind of take a risk-based approach on how to address those?
Sure. So if everybody didn't hear, I think the essence of the question was about specifically at manufacturing transfer and how to deal with debts that may be incurred there. So very aptly, very critical point in a medical device's life cycle. You've gone from the engineering team and are handing off to the operations team. So some of the things that have worked or I would advise and had experience with, particularly at Boston Engineering, where we don't do manufacturing, is that handoff becomes particularly important. So anticipating the needs of the operation teams, getting the operations team embedded, if you will, early on in the development life cycle, understanding what their needs are, their requirements. A lot of people think about user requirements as being what the end user needs. Manufacturing becomes a set of requirements as well. This is should regulatory and quality, in financial and the business requirements. So pulling those requirements in early into the development process, pulling the operations team literally in to as the engineering team is getting ready to get that DMR ready to be brought over into that operation, ensuring that after things go into that operation, that pilot build, that conversely, the development team is available to be on the floor, to visit and to witness what's going on. So it's kind of that treating the development and the handoff as a continuum, bringing folks in and through that is a great opportunity to success. Now, that of course requires a financial and potentially a timeline type of commitment. The development team is focused on developing new products. What the heck are they doing out there on the floor? There's going to be value assessed to that. So convincing people up front that that's what the plan is going to be can help that.
And just to kind of clarify, I was also talking about the end customer complaints and how that's dealt with. Similar approach.
Well, end customer is kind of like post-market once you've got it out there, after that. So again, that's understanding where your touch points with the customer are at that point in the process. It's your service organization. So whether you have a depot model or an actual field service organization, having both both operations and development feed into what's going on, particularly early on when those first products are getting out there. Have those people reading the reports, triaging them, understanding what the complaints look like. Obviously, in the medical device space, we have a complaint process, but making sure, again, you got that cross-functional encounter point. So allowing the designers and the operations folks to understand what the service organization is facing. And obviously, trade show events as well, your sales and marketing folks being invited to the table and saying, hey, these are the things that my customers or our customers are saying to us. Okay, it's that notion of cross-functional engagement, keeping the salespeople from asking for the next feature rather than saying, how's my customer doing with that feature? Keep the engineers from saying, we don't need customers, we want to work on just the next sexy thing to involve. It's getting everybody to realize that at the end of the day, it's the customer getting that type of engagement. Thank you. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for attending. And again, if you want to come visit us at booth 6633, you're more than welcome to do so. Thank you.